Welcome to another episode of Raising Them Up,
our Christian parenting Q&A podcast, and we're your hosts.
I'm Israel Wayne.
And I'm Brook Wayne.
Welcome to another episode of the Raising Them Up podcast, where we answer your parenting questions. We have some great questions lined up for this week, but we want to give you the opportunity to submit some questions of your own. And you can do that a few different ways. One is by visiting the website for this podcast, which is raisingthemup.org, raisingthemup.org, or you can email it at raisingthemup@generations.org, raisingthemup@generations.org. There's also a toll-free number that you can call, 1-800-223-6567, 1-800-223-6567. You can leave a voicemail there. That'll get forwarded on to us, and we will include it in an upcoming episode of the podcast. So, Brooke, what's our first question for this podcast episode?
So it has to do with children. I would say the word slacking at chores. So they say, first off, thanks for the podcast. So it's just fun to hear from a listener. We have a 12-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, 9-year-old, 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. My question is, how do we best follow through with the tasks given, such as chores or just a general command? We want to make sure that they are doing their best and being diligent, but we are not always able to check up on it due to other children or other things that take our attention. And when we come back around, the task is sometimes done halfway or not at all because they, quote unquote, forgot. Managing a big family can have its struggles, and this is one where we desire to teach our kids to be diligent. Is there a better way to deal with this?
Yeah, so I do talk about this in the Raising Them Up Parenting for Christians book, and I would encourage you to grab a copy of this because this is going to help you. But I'll give you a few tips, some things that I think are helpful, one of which is to make sure your children understand the expectations. If you're giving to them your expectations verbally, they can always say, oh, I didn't hear you, or I forgot. And one of the ways to make sure that that doesn't keep happening is to bring them into a quiet room where it's just the two of you, give them the instruction, and then have them repeat it back to you. And so once they've repeated it back to you, you know that they heard it and that they processed it and understood it, and then, of course, could verbalize it. And so then if they forgot or they didn't hear you, right, those excuses are removed. And so forgetting at that point just becomes disobedience.
Yeah.
It becomes not prioritizing the parent's words. And it really is violating the fifth commandment of honoring your father and mother, because they remembered to do the things they wanted to do, but they didn't remember to do the things that the parent requested them to do. So it's not that they lacked the mental capacity to remember important things. They just had selective memory. They decided to prioritize the things that were important to them rather than the things that were important to the parents. So another way that you can do that, and we found this to be helpful, particularly with one of ours who's on the autism spectrum, and that is to write the instructions down.
Right.
Give them a little 3x5 card or a sheet of paper that has the expectations written down. Some people may develop a kind of chore chart system. There's something objective that they can go to. They can look at if it's the same chores on redial. That can be helpful, but sometimes you have different things that you want them to do each day. And so giving them a list, if you will, and they keep this 3x5 card with them. This is their task for the day, that kind of thing.
But we've gone so far as to even put some on lanyards, and I think that was helpful. They couldn't get away from it. It's right there dangling off their neck. And so I think that was helpful for us too. But the visual is super helpful. And if they can check it off, like for a long time, we kept them on our fridge, and they could check them off. And it was a good accountability for me too, because frankly, I'm just like this mom where I'd forgotten what I even gave them to do. It was just so many things, so much interruption.
And you could do both, right? So you could do the list, on a lanyard around their neck or something like that. But then they could also still go to the refrigerator and check off when they've done each one, right? So that there's a sense of accomplishment for them, and there's the accountability where you can see at a glance, have they done the things that they're supposed to do? But if you're just talking about daily tasks, this woman is saying she doesn't really have the capacity to be following up with them during the day. She probably has younger ones that she's trying to work with and so forth. So I think The idea, though, of a deadline is still important. And so let's say here's 3 things that you need to do on your list, and these all have to be done by 3 p.m. And then you have to set up the expectations of this is what happens when it gets done, and this is what happens when it does not get done. And that can kind of be like the reward or consequences kind of motivation, right? Where you say, okay, so if everything is done at 3:30, you guys get to go outside, you get to, whatever, play a game, something like that.
Yep.
But if it's not done, then you don't get the privilege of whatever the privilege is.
And just
right?
being able to set a timer, like on my phone, I'll even set a timer with my follow-up. And I heard a phrase once, it's not about expectations, but inspection. And I think that's been so helpful to me because I do have these expectations. I feel like I've even trained the children, here's how you clean the toilet and here's how you do it. Like every step by step, I've stood and watched them do it just to make sure they know how to do this job. And then it's easy, let's say it's desirable for me to just turn it over to them and say, go for it. I want it off my to-do list. And it doesn't work that way. It's like you have to keep the follow-up. And if you can put it in the more convenient time for you as a mom, you're going to be less frustrated when you go, okay, I just have a standard how many times a day or how many times an evening even that I go and I inspect these chores. And that's my time. I'm up walking around. I'm going to go check to make sure that those things are done. That's less frustrating than just at the end of the day without any expectation or with that expectation that they're going to be done just to find out they're not. That's the harder thing in my opinion.
So there is another approach, and this is what my mom used to do when we were young, is she'd actually get those wind up kitchen timers, before everything was digital and electronic. Right. And she would say like, okay, you need to clean your room and you have 45 minutes. And so she would set the timer. And she would also set a timer for herself in the kitchen or wherever she was working. And she would say, this needs to be done. And here's my expectations. This needs to be done by this time. So that's another approach as opposed to here's 3 chores you need to get done by 3 o'clock. You can also say, I'm allotting 45 minutes to this particular chore.
Right. And for that 7-year-old that's listed here, 7 and 9-year-olds, that's so much more helpful for them to have a quick timing that they have to get that done and then a quick inspection. Where the 11 and 12-year-old, if they can have a little more follow through later on, that works.
Yeah, there are some children who are naturally procrastinators, and I was one of those. And so on one level, if I've got till 3 o'clock, hey man, I'm going to do whatever I want to do until like 2:45 and then try to get all 3 chores done in 15 minutes. Well, the problem is that's not realistic.
Right.
And so that can lead to frustration for both the child and the parent when the chores are just never done. And then, of course, the child isn't terribly motivated after the time period's gone by. They've lost the privilege to play the game, and now they're just bummed out, right? And so you're not getting a lot of productivity out of them at that point. So you may want to have those shorter accountabilities where here's your 45-minute timer. I'm going to check in with you at that point. You need to be done. And again, have some kind of a reward consequence scenario for what happens when these things are done or are not done.
Yeah. The consequence and follow-up, I think, is the biggest thing. And it's so time-consuming. So I think that's one area.
Well, the mom says here, she says, I don't have time to follow up. I'm going to say to you as a parent, if you don't have time to follow up, these chores are not going to get done. I mean, just flat out. This is not going to happen. Accountability and management is really vital. And I love how one of the translations speaks of the role of the mother in Titus 2, where it says that she is to be a manager of her home. And I love that term as opposed to a keeper of her home. She really needs to learn how to be a manager of her home. And there's so many, my wife and I have this conversation all the time. I'm like, while you have your elbows, deep in dishwater, your children are tearing apart your house faster than you could ever hope to put it back together. So what you need to do is not be doing their chores for them. You need to find a way to make sure that you are providing accountability for them, that they're the ones that are actually doing work that's within their age level and within their capacity. And so that's the difficult thing, because sometimes as a parent, it is easier to do it yourself or just tell them, go do this chore, but you're not really providing the leadership. You're not providing training. I think you started to speak to this, but also making sure that you walk it through with them the first
Right.
however many times. I mean, it
And-
might be a lot of times actually,
Yeah.
to where we sit down and we all fold the clothes together
Yep.
and we make the bed together. And you may do that a dozen times before they're actually doing it effectively themselves.
Right.
But to tell a child, go to your room and make your bed. I remember I did this one time with my 5-year-old. I said, you need to go make your bed. And I came back in the room and literally one corner of the blanket was up on the bed and the rest of the blanket was on the floor.
Mhm.
There's like 12 inches of a corner of the blanket on the bed. And my first reaction was to get angry about it.
Mhm.
It was like, I thought, oh, this is just total disrespect. But then something checked me and I said, have you ever been taught how to make a bed? And he's like, no. And he literally just didn't know how to make a bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I need to show you
Big
how
brothers
to
are
make.
always doing it for him. And
Yeah, I need to
you know.
show you how to make a bed. And so sometimes, like Brooke said, the expectations need to be realistic.
I'll tell you though, my favorite thing is, the days we maybe didn't get all our schoolwork done, I will just sit in the kitchen after dinner and direct everybody in their chores, the things that they've already been, let's say, we've already had that program in of how to do these dishes and how to unload the dishwasher and how to sweep the floor. All of that's been trained. And I sit down, this would often be with our little nursing babies, and sit down and read our history book at that time. And they're all working at that point. I'm right there. I can glance up from my book and say, oh, you know what? I see you're just stalling out or you're sweeping the crumbs under the refrigerator, or, whatever needs addressed. And I can talk to it right then. But it makes it a lot more interesting when there's something to listen to.
Yeah. So we do audiobooks too.
Yep.
Our children will often, our younger set, like 9, 6, and 4,
Yep.
they'll fold laundry together and they'll put on a children's audiobook and listen to it. Well, they love that, and so the time goes by much quicker because they enjoy, it's like a privilege to get to listen to the audiobook.
Yeah.
And so that's really helpful.
And with that particular little set, that 9-year-old's a very good little mama. So she keeps them on task.
Yeah.
That's helpful to get some children to have a camaraderie and we're working at this together. One more thing, I know we're running out of time on this question, but adding something creative in your list. So set the table, and today I want you to decorate with, give them something, teddy bears. They have to decorate it somehow, something that's creative. Or maybe one of their chores is they're going to draw a card to send to grandma, something that is a little bit outside the ordinary of just clean and make the beds and stuff. I think helps add a little excitement and change to your daily list.
My final word on this would be, we're actually working on breaking ourselves of using the term chores. We've always used that term, but I just got thinking about it. And I thought, I don't like chores. Like a chore just sounds like something you don't like to do and you want to avoid it because it's a chore.
Yeah.
But to try to get them in the right mindset of what we're going for as a family, I think we need to switch our vocabulary to something like, this is a family service opportunity. So you have an opportunity to serve your family. So rather than having a chore chart or a chore list, having like family service opportunity. And it's amazing how reframing it, rebranding it, if you will, can sometimes really just change the mindset and that they see, oh, this is an opportunity for me to serve my family, not this is a chore that I have to endure. So again, I think this book, Raising Them Up, Parenting for Christians, is going to be very helpful for you. It has a lot of practical as well as biblical advice on many different topics of parenting, from toddler all the way up to young adult. And this is available at the generations.org web store. If you go to their store, generations.org, click on the store tab, you can type in my name, Israel Wayne, and it'll pull up a list of all the books that I've written. And we would love to have you order those books, my parenting book, as well as other books, at generations.org.
So this question reads, how do you encourage a child through bullying and social exclusion? Unfortunately, we are dealing with this with middle school girls in our homeschool group, and it is largely started by one specific family. Several of the kids are mean-spirited. The hard thing, it is difficult to ignore because we have a couple of mutual activities every single week. I've contacted the leader of our homeschool co-op and plan to have a meeting. But how do you coach your child through this situation? My daughter is the nicest girl, more quiet, but loves Jesus and would never retaliate. It is crushing her that this peer is treating her this way, and she doesn't understand it.
I think this is really important for us to understand because our family homeschools, and I went to 2 years of private Christian school, but was homeschooled the rest of the time. And other than preschool, you were homeschooled
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And we homeschool all of our children. Our children have never been to traditional school. And one thing that I experienced in Christian school was watching and observing bullying. Like it happened in the Christian school. And so there are some people who think, oh, well, we're choosing Christian school because that will help us to avoid all the bad things that happen in the public school. And you do avoid a lot of the problems that happen in the public school, particularly the curriculum is improved, right? So that's an advantage that you have. And hopefully you have good Christian teachers in an ideal situation. The thing that is often very similar is the students. And the students can be mean and they can be cruel. But for families like us who homeschool, we sometimes think, oh, well, this will never happen to us. And yet there are situations, social situations like church or homeschool groups, co-ops, homeschool sports teams, whatever, and the same dynamics take place. And there's a reason for this. And that is that the scripture tells us that sin lies inside the heart of every human. And Proverbs talks about this in Proverbs 22:15, that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And so when you take a child who has foolishness bound up in their heart and you put them together in a clump of other children who also have foolishness bound up in their heart, they reinforce the foolishness. And so we need to be mindful that just because we are mitigating against some of the known dangers, I guess you could say, of a government school environment, you still as a parent have to be proactive. And so what advice would you give, Brooke, to this mom and how to help her daughter who sounds like is a nice person and is not mean-spirited and wouldn't retaliate or whatever, but how can you help her sort through the fact that people are just going to be mean and that they're not necessarily going to invite her into the social group?
There was a situation in a church group that I had, same age, middle school, where there was a gal who just had it in for me. And it kind of felt a little odd because I felt like I'm just quiet and just following the program, and I'm not being disruptive. I didn't understand how I even stood out. Of course, as an introvert, you never want to stand out. But she's had just some sort of nasty comment for me every time I'd pass her. And I remember talking to my mom, just as probably this young gal did, and wondering, what do I do? And her advice was, pray for this gal. And that led to my eyes being opened that this young gal came from a very broken home and was kind of jumping back and forth between her father's house and her mother's house, and maybe her aunt's house in there too. It was a bit mixed up. And it kind of made me go, she's probably lashing out. It was one of those realizations. She's lashing out because of a very disrupted life at age 13.
This is one of those like hurt people scenarios,
it's true,
right?
Yeah. And so my mom said, look for a way to show her some kindness. It took a long time. And
Jesus said, pray for our enemies.
Yes.
And bless those who despitefully use you. Matthew 5. Yeah. In the Sermon on the Mount.
And so I did that. And you know what? She turned around, and I don't know that this is like a method that anybody can just apply and plunk into, because that's not how life always works.
Right.
So, sometimes we need to be waiting for the Holy Spirit to work in somebody's life. And I saw it with this girl. It wasn't really a big deal or anything. I might have given her some little gift, or I know for sure I tried to just say something positive, and it changed. And she actually kind of became a quasi friend at that point. And so I would encourage just the praying and realizing that a lot of times a hurt person does just lash out at everybody around them. And if she's an easy target, and then to look for some way to show kindness. But then fourthly, there is a time to just speak up, to remove yourself from that conversation. And that's going to take some balance, especially if you're in a class together. But maybe there's a time just to say, that's not true, and walk off. Engaging more and more and trying to get into an argument is really going to just deteriorate in that situation.
And as a parent, you also have to protect your child. So if this is an institutional systemic problem where the leadership will not address it, it's going to be continuing, particularly if there's harm that's coming to your child. I think you may want to go talk to this child's parents But I will say, I'll warn you on this, that I've never seen that go well.
Well, and this mom said she was going to go talk to the homeschool co-op leader.
Well, she did.
That
Right.
makes
That's
a
a great
good-
place to start.
Yeah.
But like if institutionally they're saying we're not going to do anything about it, they're just not doing anything about it. As a parent, sometimes you can go to another parent and say, hey, this behavior is happening. Your daughter's being mean to my daughter. I'll just tell you, be braced if you do that.
Yeah.
Like 99 times out of 100, that's going to go bad.
Yeah.
There's a reason usually that children have the green light to have that kind of behavior. It's usually because they have a dysfunctional family situation and the parents are just defensive and they want to defend their child. And so oftentimes they will then bully you, right? And so that can go bad. But every once in a while, you get a scenario where a parent just doesn't know and they care and they're like, hey, thank you so much for telling me. You know, if my child, speaking of Brooke and I, if my child was doing that, I would want to know.
Yeah.
And so I would appreciate somebody coming and saying, hey, your child is bullying my child. I would say, man, I didn't know. We'll take care of it. But I'm going to tell you, seriously,
Even
most of the time,
like a lot of humility is needed if someone comes to you and says this, you know, it's hard.
For sure. But I tend to believe the adult. And so that's my default. But you'll be surprised that most of the time parents are going to defend their kid.
And it's really becoming more in my mind lately that we need to be talking with our young people more about relationships. And one of the ways I recently did this with one of our gals was just got out paper and a pencil because I really am much more visual. And so to have conversations, sometimes I start losing my way and I start stumbling over my words. So one of the verses I brought up was 1 Timothy 4:12, which says, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. And I really love bullet lists. So of course I was drawing this out as a bullet list to give my daughter and be able to say, even if those around you are not acting in these ways, you yourself are called in scriptures as a youthful person here to have these things that you are aiming towards, that you're an example, not just living out, but that you're actually an example to others with.
Our final question for the podcast is one that's directed to you, Brooke, and it says, I have a question for Brooke. How do you manage your time alone with the Lord? As moms, we spend so much time with our children in His Word and training them. What do your personal quiet times look like?
So this has varied a lot over the years. And I guess I always encourage moms, most of all, hey, make it happen somehow. And if you've missed a day, don't beat yourself up about it, but just go in the next day and say, I know I need to get some of the word inside of me. I need some prayer time. And that's like the most basic thing I would encourage moms in, because this is not about us winning favor with the Lord. As believers, we have the Lord's fellowship with us and we have that communion with Him. This is about us learning how to read from His word, to grow in Him and like find the answers that we need for training our children, and then seeking His face. I liked a lot the story, and it was taken from a Christiana, which is the Pilgrim's Progress Part 2. And this is an audio version. I haven't actually read it, but I really liked the part where Christiana and her children get to the house beautiful and they've been refreshed and they've just been like, had this beautiful display of a feast. And I believe there's new clothes involved for their journey and they're equipped. As they set out after having been guided there by Greatheart, and they go out the gate and he starts saying, oh, see you later, goodbye. And Christiana realizes in a flash she needs his help because he has kind of paved the way for them and fought for them and fought some of these ugly giants and all that in the land. And she says, wait, you can't leave me. I need your help. And he says, you didn't ask the Lord of the hill if you needed the help. And so I'm just under his service. You'll need to ask him. And that has stood out to me so much as a mother that I need to ask. His last phrase was, if it's not worth asking, it's not worth having.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
That'll preach.
How much of the time do I just go through my day acting like I've got this, even if it's old stuff that I've done before, I've done the routine. And yet my goal here is not just to do a checklist, even though it's very satisfying. My goal is really to impart to my children something from the Lord. And if I don't have that myself, if I haven't asked the Lord myself, then I'm kind of just pulling out from my own, my own person. And that's going to dry up and be very empty pretty fast. So I just want to encourage moms, get in the Word somehow. And it's hard when you have a baby on your lap or a toddler who rips the pages out of the book because their little foot kicks your pages and you're like, no, I don't want that. And then I went to a cell phone so I could read as I was, with something that was a little harder and little baby feet couldn't hurt. And did that. I'm back to my paper Bible, which I love. And I've got those beautiful highlighters. And, even if I only get a short time before there's an interruption, and there is, I just love being able to particularly write down what stood out to me. So a couple more things. Of course, we do our family Bible time. That's huge to me, just to be able to get the time there happening with the Word, with our family. And then I also oftentimes will do something where I'm training our little ones, but if I'm working with them and gaining something for myself, even if it's a short page of a devotional or a page of my Bible study, that helps a lot. And then like right now, I'm going through Foundations in Faith, which Israel wrote. And I'm going through this with a group of ladies from our church. And so once a week, I need to get through a lesson in here. And I'll admit, it's like Friday comes up and I'm scurrying to get a little time in here. So there's nothing perfect about my life at all.
And just let me jump in. This is a Bible doctrine curriculum that's 36 weeks, 180 lessons. So it's 5 lessons a week for 36 weeks. And it's sort of an introduction to systematic theology. And the publisher, Master Books, has been marketing it and promoting it to high schoolers. But I really wrote it with parents in mind and adults in mind, because I think adults need it. And so it's not childish in any way.
It's very true.
So this is a great resource that you can use as a parent and go through yourself.
So we're just getting on a Zoom meeting and doing it together. So it's like, I don't even have to leave the house for that. But there's a little bit of accountability that comes, I find, when I'm doing this with other gals, because I go, oh, maybe this week was extra busy and I can't get to it, but I'm like, but they're waiting. I know they're going to be there and they're going to be done. Some of them are very consistent, and that helps inspire me. So that's something that this has been not too much, but this is my second time through it. And I find I'm really encouraged, just considering things like, why does Jesus' death on the cross make a difference in my daily life? Or really, what is the importance of the resurrection? If that hadn't happened, how would that just dispel everything that I believe in? And like, why should I believe in the resurrection? Generosity, there's a lot of things in here. So that's one way. And then finally, I want to mention something that we offer through familyrenewal.org, a book called The Quiet Place. And it's a bit of a devotional. So you've just got a short page. And I love these sorts of things because I can get through them in a reasonable amount of time. But I'm having just, again, that time where I'm being into the Word and the Word is getting into me. And that disperses then to life.
Yes, we have a number of resources that are devotionals, Bible studies that we sell on our web store, which is familyrenewal.org/store. But then you can get my books, like the parenting books and also the foundational truths, Bible doctrine curriculum. You can get those through generations.org by going to their web store and search for my name, Israel Wayne. We also would encourage you to make sure that you subscribe to this podcast so that you can listen every week. Please share it with your friends. And we would love to have you also visit our speaking website, which is israelwayne.com. And there you can get in touch with us if you're interested in having us speak at an event that's coming up at your church or other location. Contact us through israelwayne.com. There's a web form on there that you can write to us. Again, our ministry is familyrenewal.org. You can connect with us also on social media. Just look up Israel Wayne or Family Renewal, and we would love to connect with you there. Until next time, thank you and God bless.
This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.